Not quite the sporting weekend we were expecting. Wales and Scotland's Six Nation game is postponed, so it's Match of the Day X in half an hour and just football talk now on BBC One.
Hold on to your hat, the ride has only just begun.
This could be an epic game.
Coronavirus outbreak, now a pandemic, is having a daily impact.
Premier League has stopped the fair play handshake. Football is suspended completely in Italy and Switzerland.
La Liga in lockdown.
Manchester City against Real Madrid postponed.
The Premier League is one of the last divisions still standing.
First game in the UK called off.
We've had a few players that have shown symptoms.
We're in the middle of a pandemic.
Health is more important than anything.
We play for the people. There's no punters in the stadium. For me, that would be a huge blow.
You can't play football without fans.
Very little epidemiological or medical reason at the moment to ban such events.
Totally underwhelmed by the lack of leadership and clear message.
Mikel Arteta has tested positive for the coronavirus.
Had the virus for the last couple of days.
Suspend it, shut it down.
All English and Scottish football matches are suspended because of the impact of coronavirus.
Good afternoon. Don't worry, no Mrs. Brown's boys, but we do have a slightly different football focus for you today. All league football is off until at least April the 3rd in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. There are no international friendlies, no World Cup or Africa Cup of Nations qualifying. Champions League and Europa League games have been postponed. There's no action in any of Europe's top divisions this weekend, and a decision on the Euros is expected on Tuesday. Plenty to discuss this lunchtime. And about what has happened, what might happen. We've got Tim Cahill, Dion Dublin and AP's global sports correspondent Rob Harris with us in the studio as well. Let's pick up some of that with the Chief Executive of Premier League Brighton, Paul Barber, joins us from the training ground. Paul, really appreciate your time joining us to talk through what it's like to be in your position at the moment. We heard Nigel Pearson talking there, and football is, we know, such a massive operation. Was it a unanimous decision from the Premier League to sort of take things into your own hands, to go against government advice and postpone the matches?
Yes, it was. I think it was absolutely the right thing to do. I think at this time we've absolutely got to prioritise people's health. And as much as we all love football and as much as we wanted 30,000 people here at the Amex today to play Arsenal, it wouldn't have been the right thing to do, and it isn't the right thing to do at this time.
Give us an idea, Paul, of the sorts of things that you are having to think about at the moment, because, you know, as well as the football and what happens potentially with that, you've got season tickets, you've got contracts, you've got catering, all that sort of stuff that is going on. I imagine your to-do list at the moment is gigantic.
Yeah, I think there's probably somewhere around 200 or 300 things on this list that we're working through to try and prepare ourselves for every eventuality. I mean, our priority and the Premier League's priority is to play out the remainder of the season. That's what we all want. That's what the fans want. That's what the clubs want. But we also have to be realistic that we really don't know where this virus is heading, where we will be on the 4th of April when we intend to start playing games, or whether we'll be able to complete the fixture list. So we've got to look at every eventuality. We've got to think about people. We've got to think of our players and obviously our coaches. But we've also got to think about the fans coming to the stadium and how they get to the stadium, usually through public transport, and therefore all the implications of that as well. So there's a huge amount to think of. And of course, we've got all the catering contracts, the sponsorship contracts, the tickets we've sold for the season, the hospitality. There's such a large range of things that go into the running of a football club, week to week, match to match. And we're all in the same boat. We're all now facing unprecedented situation. And as much as it's difficult in the Premier League, I also feel for some of our colleagues in the lower leagues who rely so much on their matchday income.
Yeah, is there any way that you as Premier League clubs can actually try to help lower league clubs? I mean, we had this discussion around Bury when they were fighting for survival. Can you find a way around as Premier League clubs to get together to help the struggling clubs financially?
Well, I think, you know, the way the football pyramid works already, we produce income that flows to the lower levels already. obviously we're in an unprecedented situation, Rob, where we haven't actually got down to the level of detail that sort of decision would have to take to get to. I think at the moment we're really focused on how we can help contain the virus, how we can keep our people fit and well, and then we can look again in a couple of weeks at where we are. But in the meantime, of course, we've got several teams already in self-isolation, which makes it very difficult for those teams then to think about the 4th of April, because those players have not just got to self-isolate for 14 days, they've then got to get themselves close to match fitness again, which could take another 7 to 14 days. So we've got a number of complexities here which go way beyond at the moment thinking of the finances. It's important. We've also got to think about the here and now.
We'll be asking Mark Palios from Tranmere about the sort of EFL and those decisions you were talking about there in a moment. Stay with us, Paul, because, Rob, just run us through. Paul was talking about their ideal option is to play out the season at some stage. What are the sort of, if there are any verified options, what could potentially happen with the rest of the football season at the moment?
Well, these are things that aren't set out in any guidebook or handbook in any way, so they're really having to make these decisions as you go along, and it's ones Europe is having to grapple with as well. So you could delay the season completely. I mean, it looks like it could be several months before we do get back into action again. You can have some sort of playoff system. So if we do manage to resume football, even for a brief period of time, try to wrap things up, conclude the season, whether it's promotion, relegation, and those European places with just a few fixtures instead. We could leave things as they stand, lock the table as it is, and I just don't think that's going to go down well with a lot of players.
Some serious head shaking going on.
I know that'd be uproar. The players would go mental.
Although I think Paul would probably be happy with that option, considering they're Brighton are at the moment.
I think the worst option for many would be declare it null and void. Actually, Karen Brady of West Ham is trying to push this for one good reason, maybe. They're just thinking above the relegation zone.
Thinking about delaying it and then just focusing on the league and forgetting about all cup competitions, forgetting about international games for next season, and maybe making sure that you can finish the season, whether it's Liverpool winning the title and also the teams getting promoted and relegated and the leagues underneath. So the delay, I think, is the most logical situation. But on top of that is forget cup and forget international matches for now and just deal with the league.
Yeah, you have to finish your season. You have to.
Well, you say you have to. I mean, let's go back to Paul, because the sort of nuclear option, Paul, of actually cancelling things. I know that's something that you have discussed as a potential, even though you don't want to go down that road, which is what Karen Brady is suggesting.
No, we don't, because every league starts with an expectation of completing all 38 fixtures as it is in the Premier League, and we really want to be able to do that. I mean, all I would say is if we're going to go down the playoff route, I hope that starts at 16th and not 15th. But in all seriousness, I think our intention must be to try and complete the fixtures. But as I said before, we've got to put people's health first. And at the moment, it's really hard to imagine putting on a football game in the Premier League in 2 or 3 weeks' time. It's really hard to imagine that, given the scenario that we're in. If we were to freeze the league, then for me, it would be incredibly unjust for Liverpool not to be awarded the title, because I think everybody in the game appreciates what a fantastic season they've had and what a wonderful team that they are. So that for me would be very unjust. But equally, it would be unjust for teams to be relegated when there's still 8, 9, 10 games to play in the Premier League. And the financial consequences of that for those teams is very difficult. Equally unjust for Leeds and West Brom not to be promoted, because we know how hard it is to get out of the Championship. We know how hard they would have worked even to get to this stage of the season in the top 2.
And Paul, on that issue of potentially, the Leeds and West Broms of this world, there has been some suggestion about an expanded Premier League when the next season starts, whenever that might be. What are your views on that?
Well, I think that's a possible option. To leave the 20 teams in the Premier League as it is would obviously help us and help others. But to bring the 2 top teams from the Championship up, give us a larger league next season, perhaps 4 relegation places for next season, and then 2 up again to get the league back to 20 the following season, it has some merit. And clearly there's a number of details in there that have to be worked through and a number of issues to work through, not least the qualification for European competition places. But, we are in unprecedented times and we may have unprecedented solutions to this particular problem.
So, Paul, what happens to the teams I wrote down on my pad here, Prestons and the Forests and the Fulhams, that have worked so hard in order to get into that position and have every chance, all of them, of getting into the Premier League? Is that just taken away from them?
Well, I would, if I was in that position, I would really feel for them. But I think we're all in a situation where with 7, 8, 9, 10 games to go, we could all end up in a better place than we are. And if we can't complete the season, then we've actually got to look at quite radical solutions to try and get over a short-term hump as it is. We could actually find ourselves, delaying the season, but then we'd probably impact another season into that as well if we were to delay for too long. So there's a whole range of different issues here. Player contracts obviously come into it because most of those will expire in one form or another on the 30th of June, or at least that would be the natural break for many contracts. If we extended the season into July or August or further, what would be the implications of that? Would we have the same squad? Would we have different squads? Would players be able to move between teams at that time? There are so many implications of delaying the season beyond a certain point. And it may be that we get to a point where we just have to be pragmatic, we have to be sensible, we have to ask everyone for their understanding and cooperation. But as I said before, the most important thing in all of this is that we put people's health first, not just players and coaches and spectators, but also the staff in the clubs. We've also not got to put ourselves in a situation where we're relying on emergency services to attend stadiums behind closed doors when they could be needed elsewhere in the community. I think we've got to take a holistic view on all of this.
You've talked us through so many things that are going through your mind and that 300-item to-do list. I just wanted to finish off with you, Paul. It's been great to have you on Football Focus today, but I know that quite a few clubs are taking their sort of community responsibility quite highly at the moment as well. And you, I think Aston Villa, Fulham, a number of other teams have taken all your corporate hospitality food and given that away to the homeless. And you're also paying staff who work at the stadium on match days, whether there are games or not. Is that something you've thought through seriously and want to be a bigger part of the community there in Brighton?
Well, I think, first of all, the food we had ordered for today's game was going to simply be wasted. It made absolute sense, as I know it has for other clubs up and down the country, to get that food to the people that most need it. So that was a very easy decision to make, and we were delighted to be able to help in that way. I think where it concerns our matchday staff, very often in football clubs, it's the matchday staff that are the lowest paid, but they're also the most important. Without them, we couldn't put on matches. And it seemed to us to be the right thing to do, that whether we carry on the season with crowds, unlikely, play behind closed doors, possible, or don't play at all, those people that we rely on shouldn't suffer for the last 5 home games of the season. They're important members of our community. They're very important members of our staff, and we felt it was the right thing to do.
Paul, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you very much. I think you better get cracking on that to-do list. Good to speak to you. That's the Chief Executive of Brighton, Paul Barber. So that's the Premier League perspective. Really clear what they are thinking through, and even potentially an expansion of the division next season, whenever that next season might be.